Joe kept a specific table reserved at his seaside cafe for 33 years. Regardless of what customers demanded, he refused to allow anyone to sit at the table until one fateful day. Joe's new customers walked into his cafe and never dared to sit at the table with the candle light on and the reserved sign on it. But his regular customers would constantly bug him about the table. "Why won't you let us sit there? No one ever comes regardless of the reservation," they would complain about. Joe said, "I don't care, it's reserved." One day, one of the regular customers was feeling particularly impatient and asked one of the waiters why Joe was so insistent on keeping the table reserved. "What is your boss's problem?" the waitress said. "Look, it's a sad story, don't pester him." Joe's parents owned this cafe before him. 33 years ago, when he was 18, he was madly in love with a girl named Linda, but her parents didn't think Joe was good enough for her and forbade her from seeing him. "Okay, now I'm interested, you have to tell me the whole story." Well, the parents moved to Europe with Linda as soon as the school year ended, but the day before the family left, Joe ran over to her house and asked Linda to join him at the cafe. He told her that he reserved a table for her and a candle would be lit waiting for her to join him, the waitress said. As the waitress explained the rest of the story, she told the customer that Joe had waited for Linda at the cafe, but she never came. Her parents forbade her from going to see Joe one last time. On that night, Joe promised himself he would keep the table reserved with the candle lit in the hopes Linda would return one day. "That is such a sad story. I feel bad for pestering him about the table," the customer said, and left the cafe. One day, a lady walked into the cafe and was headed towards Joe's reserved table. When the waitress stopped her, she said, "No ma'am, I'm sorry, but that table is reserved." She replied, "Well, good, because I reserved it 33 years ago and I'd like to finally use it." Stunned by what the woman said, the waitress didn't know what to say. Then she managed to blurt out, "Please wait here, I'll be back in 2 minutes," and rushed to find Joe at the back of the cafe. She said, "I need you to come to the front. A lady is saying she reserved your table 33 years ago." Joe didn't even respond and rushed to the cafe. As soon as he saw the woman, he realized it was Linda and ran to her, and they stood staring at one another for some time. Joe pulled a chair for Linda and they sat down at the table that had been waiting for her for 3 decades. Joe said, "You look beautiful," Linda asked. "Even after all this time?" "Of course you are. What happened the night before you left?" Joe couldn't help but ask. Linda said, "Joe, my parents physically blocked the door to make sure I wouldn't leave. I was adamant about going to Europe and coming back to you as soon as possible." Joe asked, "But what made you give up?" Linda said, "My mother forged a letter from you," the letter said. "You were getting married soon and you were about to have a baby with your fiancé. I gave up. I was so heartbroken that I just tried to forget you as soon as I could." Joe was shocked to hear this. He understood that Linda's parents didn't want him to be with her, but he had no idea that they would go so far as to prevent her from coming back by lying to her about him. Joe quietly said, "I never got married or had children. I was so sure you would come back to me." Linda explained, "Well, I eventually got married and had 2 children. My children are so amazing and I had a good marriage for a while, but he left me 5 years ago." Joe was sorry to hear that Linda's marriage had ended, but he was happy that she had children and managed to live a whole life even though it wasn't with her. He said, "A beautiful woman like you probably got married again." Linda replied, "No, I didn't. I went on with my life focused on my children. 2 years ago my mother died though." Joe said, "I'm sorry to hear that." Linda said, "No, don't be. That was when I found your real letters. I read all of them and decided to return. I needed to wind up my mother's estate, so it took a little while." That day, the pair spoke for hours until after the cafe closed down. Linda eventually lived in a guest house for a few weeks, but moved in with Joe after they remained inseparable for years and ran the cafe together. Every evening, they enjoyed dinner together at the same candlelit table, making up for the time they lost. What can we learn from this story? Compassion is essential towards people whose actions we don't understand. The customer rightfully felt bad after pestering Joe about the reserved table. Her understanding could have made the situation less stressful. Commitment to our loved ones can enhance our lives. Joe remained committed to Linda even after 33 years apart by keeping a table reserved for her. When she returned, they revived their relationship.